It is vitally important to be protective and proactive about your hearing health to prevent hearing loss. And one easy way to do that is by wearing hearing protection. There are a lot of options when it comes to those devices. So Doctor of Audiology Greg Swingle from Arizona Hearing Specialists is here to discuss. Doctor, great to see you again.
Thanks for having me on the show again.
So, a lot of us may be thinking about our various New Year's resolutions. One of those might be to improve our hearing or to protect it. What are some ways in which we can be proactive when it comes to that?
Well, we live in a very noisy world. And so I think one of the biggest things that we can do is just understand how noise can affect your hearing. If you think about the amount of exposure that we have, not only in terms of very loud noise, but even moderately loud noise for a long period of time, those things can damage the hearing, and we don't really think about it because it doesn't necessarily cause pain. So understanding that high levels of noise, even if it doesn't seem like it's uncomfortable, it might still be doing damage. So understanding that and then being proactive and just putting on some hearing protection devices can really do the trick when it comes to being exposed to those sounds.
Right. I mean, the longer you're exposed to those higher decibels, the more chance that you will damage your hearing. And what types of hearing protection devices are out there that we can utilize in day-to-day life?
Well, just like you were just getting at, ultimately, if we're exposed to those high levels and for a long period of time, we want to have hearing protection devices that do the trick and that they're comfortable and they stay in and that you're going to be motivated to use. In our profession, we have a saying, the most effective hearing protection device is the one that gets used. And it's basically saying that a lot of people just don't even put in hearing protection or put on hearing protection because it's uncomfortable or it doesn't stay in, or there's a lot of reasons why people might not use it. So there's a lot of options to try to help encourage people to use the devices. There might be some that go over the ears. Those are kind of the good old-fashioned ear muffs. Those are very, very effective, but they're also kind of bulky and cumbersome. But there's other types that are just very generic and very cheap and easy to acquire, and they just go right in your ear, and as long as they're inserted properly, they can do a very nice job as well. If they're not staying in your ear or they're not comfortable for a long period of time, then you can get custom built earpieces, and those can be built for a variety of different purposes with a variety of different features depending on what your goals are for your hearing protection.
Well, and like you're mentioning, you might have a couple different types of earpieces that serve different types of purposes. What's a couple that you can run us through that serve specific purposes?
Well, one very popular one would be like a musician's earplug. If you use just one of those good old-fashioned foam earpieces that you squish up and you put in your ears, like I said, those can be very effective as long as they're inserted properly. But A, a lot of times they're not inserted properly, and B, they tend to treat different sounds, different frequencies in different ways. So they turn certain sounds down more than others, and that doesn't sound good. It might do a nice job protecting your hearing from the noise, but it doesn't sound good. And if you're a musician or you're trying to appreciate the world around you, you don't really want to distort the sound. You want to just turn down the volume. So musicians' plugs can have special filters that end up turning down all frequencies the same amount, and so you still get that nice sound quality that you're looking for without while still protecting your hearing. And then there's other options for like hunters, for example, where it'll allow the sound through, but then if there's a very, very loud sound like a gunshot, then it'll just shut down and protect your hearing from that particular event, and then it'll allow the rest of the sound through. So those can be effective for people who are maybe hunting with firearms.
And what are some indicators or symptoms that you may already be doing damage to your hearing?
In terms of the environment, one indicator would be if you're struggling to hear the person you're talking to. In other words, if you can't hear normal conversation over the noise, then that might mean that it's pushing some limits as far as being possibly too loud, especially if you're in that environment for an extended period of time. But there are also other symptoms that you might start to experience because of your day-to-day life. If you have noisy hobbies or jobs, then ultimately you might end up starting to experience tinnitus or ringing in the ears. It might not be ringing, but some sort of sound that's not in the environment that you hear. That's called tinnitus, and it's a very common kind of symptom of noise exposure. Also, hearing loss can occur because of noise exposure, but it doesn't necessarily happen immediately. You don't all of a sudden just go deaf because you were exposed to some noise, you gradually lose some hearing over time. So you might start to say, man, I don't feel like I'm hearing people as clearly as I used to. Or in a noisy environment, you really struggle to follow the conversation, whereas you didn't necessarily before. Those might be indicators that you're actually doing some damage to your hearing because of the noisy hobbies or jobs that you might have.
Well, and it's important to note that even if you have done some damage, it's not too late to protect the hearing that you have left, so to speak. So that's why it's important to come and see you. I'm going to give them the information. Dr. Swingle, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And if you'd like to learn more about what Arizona Hearing Specialists have to offer, visit arizonahearing.com or give them a call at 520-600-EARS.